Christian comedian Tim Hawkins once said in one of his sessions that as a kid he was asked to perform in a play about the prodigal son, and he was to play the part of the prodigal son's father. He only had 3 lines: kill the fattened calf, give him a robe, and put a ring on his finger. And he said, "Lord, I hope I don't screw this up." Play comes around, and he says his 3 lines: kill the fattened calf, bring him a robe, and give him the finger. Lord willing, I don't mess up the same way. Oh, man. So, it is December 23rd. It is Christmas, and if you haven't bought all your presents yet, Lord help you. I was at Superstore the other day, and you cannot find a place to park. But around this time of year, generally, we tend to start thinking about the nativity story. Classically, we tend to turn to the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, as their accounts are probably the better known and maybe more well-written in some circumstances. Now, as we're reading through these, you might realize that there are a lot of people in abnormal circumstances while all this is unfolding. For example, Mary, a young Jewish girl, virgin, bride-to-be of Joseph, suddenly is told by an angel she's going to have a child through immaculate conception. That's not normal. Same thing goes for Joseph. Average carpenter suddenly finds out his bride-to-be is going to be carrying the Son of God. That's also not normal. But if you stop to look and think and analyze the story, have you ever wondered what Jesus was going through? This whole thing was a bit of an abnormal situation for him as well. So the question remains, what did he give up, and why did he do it? So I'd like to take an opportunity to break down the Gospel of John and what the disciple John has to say on this, in order to get a better understanding of what Christmas really means. Like, for a lot of us, we celebrate it as a time where Jesus came down to save us. But do we ever stop to think about what Jesus was doing and what he gave up in order to do this? Because our salvation came at a cost. So I'd like to take time to explore that cost. So, starting in John chapter 1, and a little bit of background, the Gospel of John has often been described as an eagle because he uses a lot of lofty words and cosmic terminology, shall we say. By comparison to the other Gospels who give us a good look at Jesus, the man, John takes time to give us a good look at Jesus, who is God. So I'll begin with John chapter 1, verses 1 to 5. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not overcome it. So breaking it down. According to John, Jesus was God. Jesus was the Word. Jesus made all things. He was life and light. So that already gives you a pretty good understanding as to what Jesus was giving up when he was coming to earth. He was giving up the splendor of heaven. He was giving up the praises of angels. He was giving up his godhood, his power, his immortality. He was giving it all up to come down here to us. Now, John makes a reference to Genesis 1:1 in how he starts with, in the beginning. Now, by comparison, I think it is such a pleasant reminder to read, in the beginning, God. There was nothing else but God. There was nothing before him, just him. He was eternal, he was all-knowing, and he knew exactly what was going to happen before he willed it to happen. Now, continuing on, verses 6 to 8, there was a man sent by God, whose name was John. He came as a witness, to bear witness about the light, that all might believe through him. John was not the light, but he came to bear witness about the light. Now, John was a man, born of normal means, but as a man who was able to especially bear witness to who Jesus really was. I mean, the prophet Isaiah describes him as being lowly and common. Nothing is special about him that we should admire or be drawn to. So Jesus blending into the crowd, for one such as John to have the ability to pick him out was important so that he could at least draw attention to Jesus in the sense that he is God, this is the one that you are looking for. Since there were so many who missed it, there needed to be at least one who could point out and say that this is who he is and that he is here among us. Because in Jewish thoughts, the concept of God even coming down to our level was both improbable and impossible, and yet it happened. So to their stubborn minds, they needed somebody to kick things off and point them in the right direction. The true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him. Yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have seen his glory, glory as of only the Father, the Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. John bore witness about him and cried out, "This was he of whom I said, 'He who gives after me ranks before me, because he was before me.' For from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, the only God who is at the Father's side. He has made him known." Now these verses basically summarize Jesus again in a nutshell. He sits at the right hand of God the Father. He is the law, he is grace, he is truth, everything about him made incarnate here on earth. Literally, Emmanuel, God with us. He breathed all of creation into existence, and he is here among us. He sat in heaven and heard the praises of angels, and yet he is here among us. He could speak a word and make anything happen because of his divine abilities, and he is here among us. That is who Jesus is, and that is what he gave up to come here and to walk and to live among us. Now, when you step back from John, because he takes such a different angle than Matthew and Luke, it almost makes you stop and go, huh? Because if Jesus had all these powers, then why didn't he just fix everything and just snap his fingers and cleanse the whole earth? And that kind of question still boggles the mind. Because why would he give up heaven and angels and divinity for being able to walk among us? I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and I don't know if anyone else can comprehend it. Show of hands. If you had a really lucrative job opportunity that would set you up for life, how many of you would take it? If you could have provision for the rest of your days, how many of you would say yes to that? I know I would. Being a student, money is a thing. So in a sense, Jesus had a lucrative position, but he gave it up so that he could come and dwell among us. So that's the state of the matter, but the question still remains, why would he give it up? Why would he do something like this instead of just willing a new way of forgiveness and salvation into existence? Now the answer, I believe, lies in Philippians. I know it's Christmas, and I know we should be focused on the Gospels, but hear me out, this is going somewhere. In Philippians, the Apostle Paul breaks down Jesus' motive, because it is a motive that should motivate all of us here in the church today. So starting at Philippians chapter 2, verse 4, "Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Now, this was a major command, as seen in the book of Acts. Believers would share everything that they had. They were literally like a new kind of family. Every possession they owned, all the land that they owned, all the food that they owned was shared equally among each other so that everyone was provided for and cared for. Now, that may seem dirt simple, but there is also a spiritual connotation to this. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being in the likeness of man. That is why Jesus came. The Greek word used for equality literally means I exist with. Jesus did not want to be with God if it didn't mean we couldn't be with him. He gave it all up for us because he loved us so much. So the theme of Christmas is love, in addition to sacrifice and servitude. We could not celebrate this time if it weren't for the simple fact that God loved us so much that he was willing to give up heaven and angels and his godhood for us. He took on a fleshly, sinful human form in order to walk among his creation and to see what it is we're experiencing. He got a first-hand look at the human situation. And to many, that seemed like such an impossible thing, because why on earth would God come down among us when God is divine? And the acts of the Old Testament still resonate in Jewish culture to which Jesus was born into. And God is splendor, God is power, God is mighty. Why would he bother with us? And it's a simple one-word answer: love. He wanted to restore the connection that was lost in the Garden of Eden. He wanted us to have an intimate relationship with him, and he wanted to love us. And if that couldn't happen, then he didn't want heaven. He wanted us with him in heaven. And so he pulled off the unthinkable in order to make that happen. In no other religion has God ever come down in human form to save somebody. Gods have come down to deliver judgment, to declare war, to destroy, to annihilate, but never have they come down to offer forgiveness and salvation. Jesus came so that he could serve us. Again, flipping the situation on its head. God serving man in order to save him from a situation beyond his abilities, to give us a means to salvation because of his love for us. And being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Jesus came as a baby, knowing that his mission was to die. He gave up the splendor of heaven and the praises of angels in order to be nailed to a rugged wooden cross, to be beaten and whipped beyond recognition. Phil Vischer refers to this as the upside-down principle, and I'm inclined to say that he's right. Because to us humans, who in the right mind would give up such prominence in order for the sake of someone below them? God did, because of his love for us. And this mindset, this love, we are to share with each other, with those around us, with everyone. So in summary, Jesus came for two reasons. He was A, obeying the Father's will, and B, he loved us and he didn't want heaven without us. Now these two reasons compelled him to become a servant for all, to become Emmanuel, God with us. This single act of servitude changed the course of human history forever. And we are called to do the same. We are called to have a similar mindset, to become obedient, to take after the mind of Christ, as Paul encourages us. John writes Jesus as being the Word incarnate, dwelling among us. No longer is he cosmic. No longer are the abilities beyond us. No longer is anything beyond us, because God made a way for it to happen. He brought heaven down to earth. He reestablished the connection that was lost because he loved us. And it starts here at Christmas. The only reason why we can celebrate this is because God loved us so much, he wanted to make it happen. And he moved heaven and earth to make it happen. The amount of astrological and scientific improbabilities that took place on Christmas are fantastic. When it says that the wise men followed a star and that the star stopped, scientists have found that a star will follow an orbit and then loop back around, but it will hover in place, making its turn for a period of time. That doesn't just happen. That is ordained to happen. Thousands of years before Jesus' birth happened, God gave a star its path, knowing that it would rest in one place to signal the birth of Jesus. Even if you were to take a look at Jesus' name, in Jewish it is Yeshua, which is a derivative of the word Joshua, the Hebrew name for Joshua. It is not a royal name, it is a common name, a household name, a name everybody can know, a name that is not above servitude, a name that is not above his people. It is a name that everyone can cry out when they need him most. It is a name everyone can whisper when they're desperate for him. It is a name everyone can sing when they're grateful for what he's done for them. Now, as Paul commanded the church in Philippi to live in an identical manner of humility, living with a sense of purposefulness to follow after Jesus' example, I believe we are called to do the same. Now, I know that for some of us, much like Mary and Joseph, we couldn't imagine the improbable happening. What the Walton family is doing in Malawi, I couldn't imagine doing that. So why don't I break it down to a small scale for you all? This season, I invite you to, instead of going to another Christmas party, to look out for your neighbors, to see which one of them need a shoulder to lean on, see which one of them just needs someone to talk to see which one of them needs somebody who will listen to their problems. Because I get the feeling that there's a lot of broken and hurting people out there who need to know the love of Jesus that he showed us in this season. And if we can do the same, then we are fulfilling his mission. We are fulfilling what Paul commands us to do in addition. We're supposed to take after Christ, aren't we? Then we are to show his similar love. We are to obey his command, and we are to adopt the servant mindhood to help others. We're to step down from our prominent positions and to mingle with the broken and the hurting who are not on the same level as us. My challenge to you this Christmas season would not be to merely remember the Christmas nativity, but to live it out, to embody that same love and compassion and servitude in order to kneel and help. Jesus washed the disciples' feet in Luke 22, and he said, "The greatest in my kingdom must be the least of these here on earth." Serve. Become a servant. Live in obedience to God. Love one another as Jesus loved you. Now, there's a band called Down Here, and they have a song that I heard on the radio a few times called How Many Kings. Now, I just want you all to take some time to listen to what the words of these songs are. I want you to personalize it, realize it, understand that this is what God has done for you.